Buenas tardes, amigos. Hoy en Vacaciones de Carbón tenemos un tema especial, un tema que realmente nos preocupa y supongo que habréis visto muchas imágenes a través de redes sociales de la problemática que está habiendo con los opiáceos, sobre todo en Estados Unidos. Nos hemos ido un paso más allá. No queremos mostrar simplemente estas imágenes repetidas que sabemos que pueden herir la sensibilidad. Queremos analizar de esto desde una manera más profunda y contundente y nos hemos ido al epicentro, en concreto a Portsmouth, en Ohio, donde se declara o se declaró esta emergencia nacional durante ya cierto tiempo. Y vamos a entrevistar a un autor que ha escrito ya 2 libros acerca del problema de las drogas en Estados Unidos, ni más ni menos que Joshua Lawson. I did a little bit of helping the community myself. I was actually a peer support. I did some training through the Maryland University online, and that was all online. And my small contribution was to help people who was through family problems and to give them some moral support, or they lost some people, or they went through gambling and drinking problems. So I'm a little bit familiar with the topic, not as much as yourself, of course. And for me, just such an honor to have you here. I'm really pleased to have you around. And if you don't mind, my first question will be, why did you choose theology for your studies? Because from our side, I'm from Europe. You only study this just in case you want to be part of a church, or you want to, like, a priest in this case or something, you know. So why you need to study this, if I may ask?
Yes. And by this, I assume you're referring to drug use addiction, the topic of my books. Is that correct?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I live just outside of a small town in rural Ohio called Portsmouth. And Portsmouth is nationally known in the United States as one of, if not the epicenter of the rural opioid crisis, as it's been come to be called. The area we live in is very socioeconomically disadvantaged. There's a lot of poverty as far as American standards go. Portsmouth, Ohio, according to one media outlet a few years back, was ranked the 25th poorest town in the United States. We have a long history of declining industry, stretching back to the 1970s, 80s. That would be the coal industry. Not a lot of economic opportunity. Median family household income, education levels, everything is beneath state and national standards. And, about 2 decades ago now, our area was one of many that were targeted by pharmaceutical companies who were looking to manufacture and distribute new opioid prescription painkillers, because there's a lot of people in our area who experience lifelong chronic pain. And of course, like I just alluded to, not a lot of economic opportunity, underlying social determinants that often predispose a person towards developing substance use disorders. And through the marketing, through the distribution, this is a story that's been told by many different authors, news outlets, documentaries. You can find this information easily. A lot of people begin to develop, drug addictions, chemical dependencies that cost them, in many cases, their families, their jobs, ultimately their lives. That was a couple decades ago, but the situation has continued to evolve and take different forms since then. And so I'm right in the middle of it. It's arguably the greatest public health issue, across the country, COVID now notwithstanding. But in my neighborhood and in my city, in my region, it's certainly our number one social crisis. So as an author, I seek to ground all of my conceptual work in the needs of my local community and people that I know and that I live with and work with on the ground every day. So it just fit, as an interest, as someone who had been impacted through friends and family by this crisis. It was just a real obvious way for me to be involved, for me to make a difference, and me to try to apply my own gifts and strengths and interests to hopefully do a little bit of good. So that's the short story of it.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Yeah. To be honest, when I started reading your book, I was expecting to see, even though you mentioned the names of these prescribed drugs and everything, you didn't go deeper into the chemical names or into the company names, anything. Were you a little bit scared, or were you afraid that this could have consequences if you would say this loud? Like, this is like, you know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about Purdue Pharma, all these companies. Were you a little bit afraid to have some consequences?
Not necessarily at this point. Maybe some people early on who spoke out about the issues were, maybe they had that fear, that trepidation, but now it's well known nationally. I mean, there have been whole states who have brought lawsuits against Purdue Pharma and a few other manufacturers and distributors. So it's very well known. It's all public information at this point. It's all kind of water under the bridge. So no, I didn't fear any, personal blowback myself on that, but rather trying to focus on the human aspect of the problem, to highlight the people who have been most directly affected by the problem, and then to explore substance use disorder, aka addiction, more from the perspective of, it's not so much the focus on the substance, because addiction can take many different forms, and behavioral addictions, substance use addictions. It's more of a person's relationship to this toxic element in their life. That's what intrigues me more so than looking specifically, in this case, at like the substances, involved.
Would you say, when I documented about this, it looks like drugs in America, they are through different waves. No, we have the crack, the heroin, the fentanyl, the prescribed drugs. Would you say this one, or this situation at the moment, is probably the worst you've seen of your experience?
Oh, by far the worst. And that's why, it's more accurate now to describe this as an overdose crisis. And opioids, but not even just opioids. Fentanyl now is being cut or mixed with almost any substance you can think of, including non-opioids like cocaine and methamphetamines. And that's what's driving the high death rates now, to where, we reached a point where accidental drug overdose is, killing more people under the age of 50 than any other cause in America. And that's just unprecedented. There have been many waves, as you said, of drug use and addiction and deaths related to that, but none ever like this.
Yeah, I can see. Okay. Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, it's hard to deal. Yeah. It is. 1 second, I just sleep. My other question. I have another question here. Oh yeah. I didn't see also a reference about the trade war with China, because I've been through other interviews or to users interviews, and they said what we noticed when the trade war started with China is like it was harder for us to get these other things. It was hard for us to get the big H or heroin, other things. We needed to go, and then the streets were flooded with the fentanyl. Did you also see a worsening off here on this when this trade war started, or how did you notice this, or what is your experience here?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly factors into the situation. To what degree, and how much of it is a direct intent, like by the Chinese government or certain officials, that's up for debate. And that's becoming more of a talking point in political circles in America, because it fits with the drug war, which originated in America, that we exported all over the world, to make this a national security interest, and of course to peg it on one of our governmental enemies, the Chinese government. It just fits. Now, it is true that fentanyl, a lot of it that's coming into the United States, is originating in China, with rogue chemists who are manufacturing it, sending it over to the cartels down south in Mexico and other sources, that then it crosses the border, it gets in through the United States Postal Service, whatever it is. A lot of it's coming from China, and some of that story has been well documented in a book called Fentanyl Inc., which is very revealing. I would definitely recommend to any of your listeners to check that out, of the process of how that's happening underground. But in those cases, you'll see that a lot of times it's just people trying to make money. It's just people trying to exploit an available market, and in this case, it's a black market. It's an underground market because drug use is criminalized. So how much is it coming? Is there a direct agenda by the Chinese government to kill American citizens? Maybe, maybe not. That's really hard to say, but it makes for a popular story and a talking point, politically speaking. But I don't know to what extent that is true. So it definitely does factor into the equation, yes. But as far as all that goes, I don't have any insider knowledge. I just know how the crisis is affecting people that I know, that I care about, in record numbers here. More so than in other places, but definitely it's affecting, worldwide in some instances as well. But yeah, it's a great question either way.
I mean, it's a factor they can use as a weapon. I believe they are using it. Yeah, I'm not blaming entirely them, but of course, probably just because the trade itself or the transporting of things becomes harder. Also, that they just go to different points. But this is what I've been following about, that it is easy to produce or to make up this drug. Is hard to detect, especially when you divide it into the ingredients and they just transport it, and usually or mostly by sea is what I see. Yeah, and after that they just prepare it there and they transport when they're closer. Okay, we were talking about your community and your area, but how would you describe this nationwide? Yeah, it is affecting the whole nation, and also a second question here, it is also by different neighborhoods, because what we can see at the moment is like they are isolating these people or these neighborhoods like dangerous areas. Don't go there, police don't go there, anybody just don't go there because we don't have the resources, so we are not interested on these people and left them deal with this. Or how is this nationwide, and how are the different neighbors dealing with this?
Yeah, it's absolutely nationwide at this point. I highlight the story that it began in rural areas like mine, but it's definitely spread everywhere now to a degree that it wasn't before. And that's one reason why it's garnered so much national attention, is because it's affecting more people who are not only a part of marginalized and minority communities. When I first got involved in this work, as an advocate, organizing on a political ballot amendment trying to address this issue back in 2018, I met with a local community leader, a black man who is, which is definitely minority in my county. We're 98% white, Caucasian, maybe about 2% black. And his first question, I was reaching out to him for support, for help, to outreach into the community and some of his circles. And I'll never forget, the first thing he said to me was, "Yeah, absolutely, this sounds great, but where was all this in the 1980s?" Of course, referencing the crack cocaine epidemic, the deaths that were associated mostly in the black community at that time. There was no national attention given to it, other than it was a scary public health issue that was confined to this one minority population. But now, with the opioid crisis affecting rural, poor white Americans, and then growing from there to affect every demographic across the country, you'll often hear people say that, well, addiction does not discriminate, and which is true. But it's also kind of an indictment that it took getting to this point where it was affecting not just poor black kids in the inner city, but also middle class and rich white children in the suburbs, to gain the kind of national attention and response from the federal government that it has now. Of course, I'm grateful for that, any assistance that can be brought to it, but it's a bit of an indictment. But yeah, to answer your question, yes, it's everywhere. It's still disproportionately affecting minority groups. Even here in the state of Ohio, where I live, black men die at a higher rate of opioid overdose than any other demographic. And so there are questions to explore there about why. Access to healthcare, certain social determinants that make them more susceptible, that are still not being addressed equitably. So all of those things are still in the mix, even though the problem has blown up to such a degree that it's affecting everyone everywhere. The marginalized and the most vulnerable are still the ones who are suffering the most, if I can put it that way.
Well, of course, they are more exposed, yeah, and they are open for more contact with the sources and everything. Of course, when you have it in just in the neighborhood or in the corner, it's usually like this. This will bring me to another question: How is the health? How are the health services dealing with this? Because we here from Europe, we understand like we have like universal health for everybody. Just here, there, I understood this. I understand this totally different. You have to be insurance or you have to be working, and the costs are high. Actually, is the help on the streets really relying on the volunteers, or what are they actually? How are they dealing with this?
In a lot of cases, yes. So healthcare in America is one of our greatest, blights. From what I understand of healthcare in other developing nations, it's very much for profit, private industry. We do have Medicare and Medicaid, which is a government sponsored healthcare, but that you have to meet a certain income eligibility to qualify for that program. It's the closest thing, to anything halfway resembling universal health care that we might have. But even right now, we're going through a time where a lot of those protections for certain individuals are being rolled back. During the pandemic, the government expanded access to Medicare and Medicaid. But now that the COVID emergency is officially declared over, a lot of people who gained health care, who were not able to afford it privately, are now being kicked off the rolls. And so you have a lot of folks who are affected by, the opioid use disorder and this crisis, who absolutely have a hard time accessing care related to the struggles that they may face, wound care for people who use drugs, um, access to harm reduction supplies. Often those have to be supplied by grassroots organizations who obtain grant funding to supply things like fentanyl test strips and free access to naloxone, which is the opioid overdose reversal drug. There are advocates in every state pushing more and more back against the drug war and more for a public health approach to solving this problem and assisting those in need. But it's a fight. It's a real fight to do that because we're still very much drowning in a drug war mentality here in the United States. That drug use and addiction is just a moral failing and a personal choice that is criminalized and penalized rather than understood in the light of like the medical disease model or just an understanding of the social determinants and how to address the root causes of this problem in people's lives and assist them from that way. We still are very much driven by the idea that we just gotta hit them harder, and the harder we hit them, essentially, that hopefully that'll shake them out of their slumber and get them to stop using or whatever it might be. So yeah, it's varied across the board. If you're low income, if you're marginalized, it's difficult to access the kind of care that you need, especially if you're living on the streets, especially if you're caught up in chaotic drug
Mhm.
use. Yeah, it's a very huge struggle, and it just exacerbates the problem for a lot of people that could otherwise receive the care that they need, but they're not getting it, so they continue to be stuck in that cycle.
Yeah, yeah. Well, even when they stop using, they need this support and they need to
Yeah.
the guidance and everything. I was very surprised to read on your first book that you were receiving more support from the pubs and the bars and these kind of places than other places, like from certain churches and everything. And also, I would like to ask you here because from my point of view, or mainly because my European mentality, when we talk about the church, we talk about the Christian Romanic church here.
Mhm.
They are understanding that you have different sections or different beliefs and everything. Are they are already centralized, or are they acting together, or they have the same opinion, or just it's just
Yeah.
totally random?
No, it varies, and there's a lot of diversity in terms of theological belief and how that informs churches' response to certain social needs and crises in their communities. In my county alone, which we have about 70,000 people in my county, we have somewhere between 150 and 200 churches, mostly Christian, Protestant, evangelical churches in a small rural county of about 70,000 people. And most of them are not, unfortunately, directly involved in this crisis in trying to provide solutions and work together on the issue. I chair the faith based subcommittee of our local public health consortium. I write books like my most recent one, Drugs and Jesus, attempting to engage faith leaders and faith communities to encourage more cooperation and more direct engagement with the issue. But it's an uphill battle. It's a challenge. And that's for a number of reasons. But yes, to answer your question broadly, there's a wide diversity of thought in the faith community in the United States. And unfortunately, not all of them are directly involved in this crisis in a positive and helpful way, unfortunately.
Is this actually union of people or association of churches? Is this the stepping stone that you see it should happen to overcome the situation at the moment, or is it something else? What would you say, or better ask, what would you say is the basic you need to overcome in order to see a light at the end of this tunnel at the moment?
Yeah, well, to me, it's all about connection and connecting people to one another. And often I try to do that through storytelling. That was the focus of my first book, The Face of Addiction. You know, we tend to keep folks who we consider to be other than us. That's a concept that I explore in my second book, The Theological Philosophical Other. That's anybody who doesn't look like me, believe like me, you know, whom I regard to be maybe outside the circle of God's favor, whatever it might be. We keep those kinds of folks at a distance, and that's just basic human psychology to a degree. So bringing people close together, often through storytelling. Anthony DeMello is a former priest who I liked, and he said the shortest distance between truth and the human heart is a story. And faith communities historically have been the ones who tell the stories that kind of inform the ways that we relate to each other in society. So the way we talk about one another, the way we relate to one another, I think that's where it begins for me. In a lot of cases, I think, because that's what changes a person's mind and changes their heart. Because until you see your neighbor who is struggling, who is maybe making choices that you find, you know, questionable, objectionable, until you see them as a fellow human being who shares a lot of the same struggles that you do, it just manifests in a different way, that they are in need of solidarity and support and love, you're not going to be moved to help them, no matter how bad the statistics are, no matter what you think about the situation otherwise, until there's that sense of connection with a person who is in need that can actually generate compassion in your heart, which just essentially means to suffer with someone, which then can compel you to act, not just in your own self-interest all the time, but also in the interest of your neighbor. So that's where I try to focus on doing that. And yeah, coalitions and associations of churches and groups can help foster those kind of dialogue and communications.
Mm-hmm. For sure, for sure. I'm afraid I need to tell you we already started seeing cases of fentanyl in other places in Europe, slowly and very slowly. It was on the news short ago that there were two guys in Madrid actually pass away because of this drug, and we also saw cases on the social media, like kids trying to get something else to have fun for a night or something, and actually this ecstasy was contaminated with fentanyl or something, and one pill and they're away. Is this also a concern in the society that this could happen, and this also bringing more light into this situation, or?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one thing that's making it so much more urgent to people is it's not just hardcore drug users. It's not just people who have a severe substance use disorder who are at risk of dying now. It's the recreational user. It's the student who's just taken something, a pill that his friend gave him to help him stay up late and study. It's the person who just goes to a party, you know, and takes, like you said, some ecstasy or whatever. And it may have something in it that they're not aware of. That's becoming the case more and more often. So anyone who picks up, who uses anything at all, it seems like, is putting themselves in an immediate risk of death in a way that we've never seen before when it comes to, you know, illicit drug use. So that's getting more people's attention. That's convincing more people that, hey, there's something going on here, that our conventional approach to this problem is not working. We have to imagine different alternative solutions to this, or else it could be my son or daughter next. You know, I don't want that for my children. I don't want that for your children or anyone's children. So we have to look at this problem differently, because the way we're approaching it now is not helping, at least, and in some cases is even making it worse.
Yeah. surprised to see this situation, because I thought on the futuristic films this will be a situation probably we will never leave. Like you can buy something considering it's something else, and you try and you're really risking your life. Yeah. And this is another topic we would like to speak about a different day, because we had a program about the cybersecurity, and we had one of the experts telling us that social media is actually really bad for drug dealing and these kind of things, because they operate with almost total impunity there, and the risks are very high, and they can reach to minors or to anybody actually trying to. Nothing happens, and if the worst happen is closing their account and they open a new one. Yeah, this is what it is actually we can see that happen. Yeah. What about the lawsuits? Because I understood that some lawsuits were filed against Purdue Pharma and these big corporations, but
Yep.
I don't know. I don't have much information, because I only saw that they just filed bankruptcy, and that was it. I don't know if they're operating under different names, or how is
Yeah.
the situation at the moment.
Yeah. Unfortunately, corporations in America have lots of legal protections. So it's real easy to get away with things and avoid accountability. But there have been cases where state attorneys have brought lawsuits against some of these companies and won. Actually, the state of Ohio, where I live right now, we're in the midst of beginning to receive settlement money from some of the big distributors and manufacturers, and that's just going out to various county government leaderships. It's not anywhere near the amount of money that I think would be uh, commensurate, with the level of damage that was done. But it's something. So there have been lawsuits brought, some of them successful, some of them a lot of money involved, that hopefully will go to the right people and go to the right organizations who are going to put it to the best use to hopefully bring a little bit of healing to the people in their communities. So it's good to see at least a little bit of accountability brought in those cases. Yes.
How will you divide or describe this thought in people? Let me tell you. It is, how will you divide the society in, like, the drugs idea or topic at the moment? It is like some bunch of people, they don't really know anything about it. Others, they know this cannot be touched, and it's just like a stigma or something you don't know talk about. And there are a group who are users. I mean, how is the society actually? Which are the best groups or the biggest groups about the drugs topic at the moment in US?
Yeah, education is big. It's very important, and unfortunately, there's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of outdated ideas about drug use and addiction that still dominate most people's minds, because they just, they're, and you can't blame a lot of people. We're busy. We have our lives. We have our areas of interest. People don't have time always to learn new things and really dive in and get educated on a subject. But in this case, that can be very costly. But there's a lot of misinformation, unfortunately, that even comes from, in many cases, law enforcement, the DEA in the United States, Drug Enforcement Agency, local law enforcement. Sometimes will put out information that's not entirely accurate, and ultimately does not educate people on what the real dangers are and how to avoid them. So in the 1980s, when the war on drugs was officially launched in the United States, there was a large scale campaign called the DARE program to just encourage kids to just say no. And that was largely a failure, because harm reduction involves education, and it involves genuine prevention measures, which means teaching children about, what's going on, being real with them at an age appropriate level, telling them, what to do in this kind of situation, what to expect, what they need to know about this or this, or, that or the other, because kids, for example, are going to experiment at some point in their life. They're going to find themselves in situations where they're tempted to do things. So they need to know what's up. We need to give them more than, hey, just say no, and expect that that's always going to work and scare them off. So education is big. And most of the education that's most valuable in the United States is coming from grassroots organizations, nonprofit groups who are focused on harm reduction, genuine drug prevention, meeting people where they are, and understanding that, hey, a person on the streets especially needs to have access to, for instance, fentanyl test strips, because there are studies that have shown, right here in my county even, where we, through our local syringe exchange program, fentanyl test strips are made available to people. And that's saved many lives. People who, instead of just using something that they were going to use regularly, first they tested it to see if there was fentanyl in it. And many people who received those strips and used them reported that it changed their behavior, that they made a better decision based on the information that they were able to receive through that simple life-saving tool. So they didn't use it, or they used it in more moderation than they would have otherwise, and potentially avoided an overdose, which could have been lethal. So, we have to go in that direction. I look at places like Portugal and the Netherlands, who have revamped their entire national policy in terms of how they approach the issue of drug use and addiction, from a public health harm reduction model instead of a criminal justice approach, dominating. And I think that's definitely a good idea, especially in our case, that we need to move more and more in that direction, because it actually is more effective at saving people's lives and giving them the tools that they need to educate themselves, so hopefully they can be safe, make the good decisions.
Yeah, I guess when you talk about education, educating kids, you're facing a wall there where some people say, hey, you cannot bring this to the kids because we need to protect them. And it is too early for them. Like if you're trying to talk about something, other topics, they will tell you, no, it's not possible to tell this to kids because actually you're bringing this to the table. So it's like a little bit of taboo. So I think it's, you will face a wall here. Yeah. Actually, I've seen something different years back. I remember one festival I was seeing. They had just one stand, and they were able to test some synthetic drugs. So basically, it was like a big pill with a fork and a knife, and they were just saying there, "Do you know what you eat? Test your drugs here for free, anonymously." And there was like a free testing there. And this is in Europe at least, So it's because they know this is underneath and or underground, better said. So some way to just basically a little bit of control or something. But it is also a big taboo here in Europe. I don't think it's everywhere is like Holland or it is actually there are different countries with different legislation, but actually it's just, for example, in Spain, they had this law of consume, or if you have a small amount or something, it was considered for your use only, and there was no penalize anything. Now they refuse this, and any amount is due fines and due some recycling courses and learning and everything. And so not everywhere in Europe is also simple. Yeah, this is why I'm afraid. I'm hoping I'm wrong, but I'm really afraid that this could escalate and it could be a really global pandemic. Let's see. Let's hope it is not. But when you read or when you see the numbers and you see the difference of the profit they make of dealing with other drugs, and the profit, the huge profit they make dealing with fentanyl and these substances, is scary that this could really spread out very quickly and everything. It seems like we are holding, but hopefully we are. We had a huge impact with the heroin in the days. I remember on the late 80s, on the 90s, my dad was driving, and I remember just addicts just crossing the motorways, that he needed to reduce the speed, and I was 8 or 9 or something. I was telling me they are all going to get fixed, for their dose. So I couldn't even imagine, This was just the big towns, but it was when I moved to UK, it was the same for me. I am from a very small town. It's just only 10,000 people. And when I moved to UK and I moved to Edinburgh, it was like, for me, it was a big shock to see all the addicts around, and even in the city center, and you can see on daylight and everything. It's like the heroin crisis never had stopped actually there, So it was like very shocking for me to observe this. So different countries, different legislation, different things behind, but it's not simple in Europe, and different countries with different things. But in the big towns, in the small towns, I wouldn't say in Europe, and in the big town, definitely you can see this drug abuse almost everywhere, and also the same for different neighborhoods and everything is something with the big town. Even when I went to Germany, I was in Germany for business purposes, and you probably heard. I don't know if you had the chance to travel to Frankfurt, but Frankfurt is well known for being one of the centers of business in Europe and probably in the world. And as soon as you leave the city center, it's just a pandemic what you can see there. Even in front of the business hotels you need to stay, they tell you no, don't leave the door. They just take the taxi here. Don't even cross the road. It's unbelievable. So the use is really expanded. And yeah, we will see. We're hoping for the best here, but we will see. Yeah. I have another question for you, Joshua.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure you do, but will you probably inquire among the people and maybe somebody who is a Spanish speaker will be interested to be interviewed or to tell us their story? Because this is something I thought on the go here. Maybe it would be good if they are willing to speak with us or something. Somebody who wants to share their story or something. I will be very interested to interview them.
Yeah, I can try to find that. Yeah, I can try to find someone for you. I would need to ask around a bit because nobody comes
no
right
rush.
off the top of my head. We have a small Hispanic community here in my county, but they many of them keep to themselves, and so there's not a lot. So I would have to do a little searching for you. But if you may be able to do that, and if so, yeah, I'd love to. If I can make it happen for you, I would.
No rush, no pressure. It's everything is amateur. It's for the information wise, it's good. Of course, I don't think I mentioned at the beginning, but we will make a reference about your books and everything, and we'll post the links and we'll bring some attention to this. I'm actually kind of done with questions because the information is just overwhelming about this. It's just I understand much better the situation now. Like I was not aware that these prescribed drugs were like a preparation for you just cooking about what actually happened. I was really surprised to see that after they remove these prescribed drugs, when people basically jump to something else that was on the streets and they make things worse. So hopefully there is a light for all of us here, and the people start getting more conscious about the use and about also the stigma and the taboo of helping them, because as we said, and probably what you are pointing in your next book is how to help them even when they stop using, because as I told you, in different towns and even here in small communities, when you see somebody who was using, they are marked for life. It's like, oh, he's a user. Maybe, well, you cannot really trust him. You cannot. It's not needed to give him a chance. So it's not needed because he can actually do some harm to you, and better keep them away. So yeah. So it's like this. I don't know if you have any questions for me, but I'm open also to reply to any questions you might have.
Well, I mean, no questions necessarily, but just to comment again that I really appreciate you having this conversation. And you sound similar. I have many different interests, and so I love to always be learning new things and having the conversations with people who can, open my view to things that I'm not aware of. So I really appreciate that, and I'm a little bit jealous of all the world travel that you've done. I've not got to travel near as much as you, but I hope to in the future. Funny story, I guess. You mentioned you're in the Czech Republic now, correct?
Yes.
I have still in my possession a business card from a dance instructor in the Czech Republic whom I met on a flight from Latvia back to the United States way back in like 2005. I met her on this flight. I talked with her and she gave me her card and said, if you're ever in the Czech Republic, look me up if you need anything.
was kind of what was his profession, you said?
A dance instructor of some sort. Yeah. I don't have it in front of me. Don't remember the name, but nice
It's
to meet.
okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's
But
okay.
yeah,
Oh,
so
I do have a question for you, but it's related to your working activities, and I believe it is not, but I wanted to ask you because there is something about the home inspection company, and but I guess this is more real estate, no? This is not related to
Right.
so this is something different, no?
Yes, yes, that's
This
yeah,
is totally
just a
different.
small business. Yeah, not related.
No, because when I saw this, I thought maybe he was actually, visiting people with problems or something. Yeah, yeah. But I thought maybe this is real estate. Yeah, this is actually.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. So as I said, thanks a lot. For me, it's an honor. It's no every day you have the chance to speak with some, author of some books you are reading, and some of these from inside. I'm sorry that you have to feel these things so close, yeah, from the very beginning. But I think you took the right approach, and you are helping the community and everything. So it's you're a reference for sure here for a lot of people, and I'm pretty jealous that you probably have had already some a lot of links and a lot of amazing people you met. You are jealous of my traveling. I'm jealous about the amazing people you met through the path and through the way. And of course, feel free to contact me anytime you need. And you have here a friend, and if you happen to want to visit the Czech Republic or Spain, just let me know. I'll be more than happy to guide you around. Yeah.
Absolutely. I will do that one. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joshua. You have a nice day. Ciao, ciao. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
El señor Joshua Lawson ha sido tan amable de concedernos una entrevista. Es teólogo y escritor de 2 libros acerca de la problemática de las drogas en Estados Unidos, como decía. La cara de la adicción, ya en 2021, donde explica cuál es la situación con las drogas. Y en su último libro de este año, Drogas y Jesús, cómo la fe puede ayudar a vencer a este terrible enemigo que son las drogas. Muchísimas gracias por su tiempo, señor Lawson. Encantado de tenerle con nosotros.